Hey, how you doing? Andy here. So the randomizer wheel plucked the phrase power in persistence from the pool of prompts that I'm using this month as part of my daily journal practice. They're all associated with the theme of strength, which is our monthly theme in the Haven. And this video is based on what I was exploring, what I was writing in response to those words. There is power in persistence. And this can contribute to creating a better world, but it can also do the opposite. I was thinking about the number of unsolicited emails that I receive from people maybe reaching out to be on the podcast or pitching on behalf of somebody else who they think would be a good guest on the Gentle Robot podcast. People who want to write guest posts on my blog. And, just generally people, trying to get me to sign up to their services or buy their products. I've noticed that many seem to subscribe to this idea that there is power in persistence when it comes to marketing. Repeat until the subject gives in and says yes, essentially. And, if I don't respond within a day or two, I could pretty much be guaranteed that there is going to be a follow-up email that arrives. And then if I don't respond to that one, there'll be another one that comes a few days after that, and so on and so forth. And many of them say, this is the final time that I'm going to get in touch. So yeah, let me know. And then there's another one, which is the final time. And there's many final times. But it's interesting how people interpret silence. For a lot of these marketers, silence is not seen as a kind of method of communicating that you don't want to hear from someone. It's not seen as a deliberate ignoring of a demand from a stranger, but it's seen as space to persist, space to keep, trying, to bump it to the top of your inbox, as they often say, to give you a nudge, to remind you, I know you're busy and these things can get lost in the noise. So I'm just, sending you a reminder, not sort of appreciating the fact that no, these things are the noise. These automated systems that obviously people use to keep persisting, to keep dropping emails at regular intervals, probably based on, the broad statistics of how humans behave. How many touch points does it take to get somebody to finally reply, or to finally respond or agree to do something in whatever it might be, whatever the call to action is. To think of it, to surrender, to give in. And these emails, as I say, they often acknowledge the busyness. They often acknowledge or sort of give lip service to appreciating the fact that, I know you receive a lot of emails like this, so I'll make it brief. But even knowing how irritating it is, and how homogenous it is, how much this is you're just adding to the noise, you're doing the same as everybody else, still do it anyway. And in the same way as everybody else, the next message might be, I know you receive a lot of emails like this, so my previous one might have got lost. So I'm just sending this again to stay fresh in your mind or to bump it to the top of your inbox. I worry about the mentality of power in persistence. Not necessarily in the idea of contacting somebody more than once or contacting someone multiple times, but really the indiscriminate and impersonal nature of this contact, and how it comes across and how it appears in different contexts, and also in the orientation of the transaction that is going on. Somebody wants to take something from me, to extract something from me, and they travel on this underlying belief that, if they ask enough times, eventually I'm going to be like, okay, yes, I'll give in, I'll say yes. And these are not the foundations of a healthy relationship, a healthy partnership, certainly not consent. It does concern me when you see these tactics employed and promoted in so many different areas of life. I received an email a while back from somebody who wanted to be on the podcast. They're asking, I've got this topic that I'd love to talk to you about for your podcast. I think your listeners will love it, blah, blah, blah. So they went through this usual pretense, and as everybody does these days, they kind of put the personal bit in, making it appear like trying to create the perception that they are a listener of the podcast. So they pick out topics from a few recent episodes and reference them. And yeah, this particular person, I was like, actually, they've got an interesting perspective here. I'm aware that this is a mass mailer. I'm aware that I'm not the only recipient of this email. But I would be interested in maybe learning more about them. So I responded to them and said, as a rule, from experience, I don't accept unsolicited guests on the podcast. I don't speak to anyone that I don't know personally, or I haven't been following for a long time. But I would be happy to consider them. So I'll follow their social media. Please, send me your social media channels, and I'll follow you. And in a month or two, if there aren't any red flags, I don't usually say that bit, but personally, as I'm filtering it, it's like, okay, I'm looking out for red flags or looking out for points that it's like, no, actually, that doesn't feel like a good fit. But if it does feel like a good fit, I'll get back in touch with them and invite them on the show. So I sort of sent an email kind of with that kind of sentiment in it. And then this person replied with a short and rather sort of sharp message, thanking me for the invitation, I think, and then asking to hear more about the podcast, including, what it's about, listener numbers, and what I plan to do by way of marketing if he was to come on the show, so that they could then decide whether or not it was worthwhile for him to do it. So I was like, what? I replied, I'm quite confused. You reached out to me asking to be on my podcast. You said it resonated with you and that you'd listened to episodes, so you know what it's about. That it'd be an honour to be a guest on it. So it kind of threw me. I obviously knew they weren't a listener. I knew the charade that people go through. I know it's like I'm one of hundreds of spaghetti gun recipients of this email. But I guess the lack of consistency across the interactions was both baffling and illuminating, a little bit refreshing as well, because they're sort of saying the quiet part out loud. It's like, actually, no, I don't listen. I obviously haven't listened to your podcast. I'm just wanting to appear on as many things as possible so that I can sell whatever it is that I am selling, is it a book or whatever it is. And I've had this with publicists before, those reaching out on behalf of clients who are like, yes, I've got this person, they'd be a perfect match for your podcast, only to then reply or respond saying that their client would only accept interviews on bigger channels when I'll reply with the same sort of request, like, can you give me more information? I'd love to follow them for a bit. But yeah, I've had that before, and it just feels like, the publicist getting in touch, sort of wasting everyone's time, really, because it's like, that this is not a fit. And yes, but it was the first time that an individual, like someone who was writing on behalf of themselves, kind of tripped over their own feet in that kind of way. And so, I think, persistence as a marketing strategy or an underlying philosophy or energy makes sense at a broader level. Exposure to adverts, to brands, to ideas that sort of flash across our field of vision, our field of consciousness, has a familiarity impact over time, as you start to sort of get this drip feed of noticing this brand or this product. But the particular and the personal level, persistence, I think, is a slippery slope. When silence or even an initial rejection, an initial, like, actually, no, that's not going to work. And maybe you say, I'm too busy right now. So that sort of keeps the door ajar for the future. But if this is interpreted as, playing hard to get, or it's seen as a challenge to be overcome by the other person. So they're playing hard to get, so I'm going to persist over time. I think we live on shaky ground when it comes to our relationship with consent in everyday life. But it is also true that persistence is the glue in a healthy relationship, where people persist, they show up for each other again and again. A solid friendship is about persistence over time, intentionally remembering someone, showing up for them, connecting. But this also has a completely different flavour to that persistence that I've been talking about so far. It's almost a reversal in the exchange from extraction to contribution. And so in the context of marketing, I think it works when the persistence flips. When someone is persistent in giving rather than taking. If someone drops into my email inbox and says, I absolutely love the podcast. How can I promote it? Because I really like what you're doing and want as many people to be exposed to it as possible. And then, if I don't reply and they follow up with some persistence, and seriously, I really want to get this out there. What's the best way I can do that? Here's potential options for ways I could do that. And that sort of makes me feel like I'm part of a potential collaboration rather than a transactional object. If we're persistent in showing that we genuinely care, that we're genuinely interested, that we genuinely do listen. And obviously we don't have the capacity to listen if we're doing that scattergun approach to trying to get as many emails out there as possible. You're not going to be able to do it in any deep, slow, meaningful way. But if we sort of look at less being more, because you're going to be able to go deeper and you're going to be able to create more meaningful connections, then this becomes an option. And so when we then want to request something or, pitch an idea or whatever in the future, actually, if you built that foundation of trust and respect, it's so much more likely to happen in a fruitful way that persists over time within the idea itself. And so this kind of persistence, when done in a genuine way, not as an obvious tactic, not as like that's the right way to go about it, I'll pretend to build meaningful connections, but when it's done in a genuine way, can lead to all sorts of magical things happening. By genuinely caring, knowing who someone is, what they do, why it matters to them, why they do it in the way that they do, and then asking and finding ways to help them do it more, do it bigger, do it better, do it however they want to do it on their terms. We can really start to build an emotional connection that can lead to all sorts of positive paths for everybody involved in that situation. So there is power in persistence. It can change the world for better and worse. And yeah, that is they were my responses, my thoughts as I wrote around this prompt after the randomizer gave it to me this month. I found it's been great to sort of be picking cards like these and exploring them in this way. They wouldn't be cards that I would pick if they weren't given to me. So I found that a really interesting way to go about writing, go about exploring, because it's often really surprising what comes out then and how dots can connect in various ways across different parts of life as well. So yeah, fancy doing it yourself? You can pick a card through the link in the description, and yeah, let me know how you get on. I'd love to hear, and maybe, yeah, if you've got anything to say about this prompt itself, please do leave a comment or drop me a message. It would be a delight to hear from you. All right, I will be back again soon for another one of these, I would imagine, because I'm really enjoying doing them. So I will do another one.